The storm that had been brewing for days finally hit Chicago with all its fury. From the 50th floor of the Thorn Holdings corporate building, Mia Rossi watched the first fat raindrops streak down the enormous glass windows as she organized the final documents for the acquisition that would be announced the next morning. At 26, she had learned to anticipate her boss's every move, every impossible demand, every sudden mood swing that could determine the success or failure of multi-million-dollar deals. Tommy Thorn remained motionless behind his mahogany desk, his eyes fixed on the 3 computer screens displaying real-time graphs and numbers. At 35, he had built an empire based on absolute control and surgical precision. It was no accident that the financial market knew him as the clockmaker. Everything in his life functioned like a Swiss watch, each piece in its exact place, each movement calculated to the millisecond. His obsession with order stemmed from a trauma that few knew. At 18, a moment of carelessness, an impulsive decision, cost his younger brother his life in a car accident. Since then, Tommy had transformed his existence into a fail-safe system where chaos could never infiltrate. Mr. Thorn, security is recommending everyone evacuate the building. They're predicting winds up to 75 miles per hour, Mia said, her voice cutting through the silence of the office. Tommy didn't even look up from the screens. We have 6 hours to review the contracts before the video conference with Tokyo. A storm isn't going to change that. Mia nodded, although a part of her questioned the decision. There was something about the intensity of the lightning that flashed across the dark sky that sent a shiver down her spine. But she had learned long ago that questioning Tommy Thorn was a pointless exercise. Besides, this acquisition represented months of hard work, and she wasn't about to let anything go wrong now. Her ambition was as meticulous as his obsession with control. The office had emptied completely. Only the 2 of them remained on the PU floor, surrounded by screens flashing with financial data and the growing sound of wind lashing against the windows. Mia knew every detail of that environment, the bookshelves that Tommy never read, but which lent an air of intellectual sophistication, the panoramic view of the city that stretched as far as the eye could see, the subtle scent of leather and wood that permeated every corner of the space. But there were moments, rare and almost imperceptible, when she caught something different in Tommy, a gaze that lingered a second longer on the horizon, an almost involuntary pause between one sentence and another, a sigh that he thought he had stifled. In those instances, Mia saw not the ruthless CEO but an exhausted man, isolated in his glass tower and numbers, a prisoner of his own need for control. The latest audit reports, she said, placing a folder on the desk. Her fingers brushed briefly against his when he took the documents, and Mia was surprised by the jolt she felt. It was always like that, small accidental touches that sent waves of heat through her body, reminding her that no matter how hard she tried to keep things strictly professional, there was something there that went beyond the boss-secretary relationship. The building shuddered slightly, and the lights flickered. Tommy frowned, looking at the ceiling as if he could intimidate the storm with his gaze. "Emergency generators," he muttered, turning his attention back to the papers. That's when it happened. A metallic groan, deep and sinister, echoed through the structure of the building. The lights didn't just flicker, they went out completely, plunging the office into absolute darkness. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the howling wind and the intense drumming of rain against the windows. Not even the constant hum of computers and air conditioning remained. It was as if the entire city had stopped breathing. "Shit," Tommy's voice cut through the darkness, laden with a tension Mia had never heard before. She heard the sound of his chair being pushed back, quick footsteps, drawers being opened. "Where is my cell? Has no signal. Mia, do you have signal?" "No, sir, nothing." She fumbled for her purse, her heart beating faster. The darkness was so complete that she couldn't see her own hand extended in front of her face. For the first time in years, Tommy Thorn was completely out of control. His laptops useless, his communication systems dead. He who had transformed his life into a Swiss watch was now trapped in time, stripped of all his technology and power. He was just a man in a dark room, and that realization terrified him more than any stock market crash. The temperature, which had previously been maintained at exactly 72 degrees Fahrenheit by automated systems, began to drop rapidly. Mia, dressed in a light business suit, began to shiver. The sound of her teeth, chattering, echoed in the silence, and something inside Tommy stirred. A protective, primal, and long-buried instinct emerged from the depths of his carefully controlled soul. "Come here," he said, his voice sounding different in the darkness, lower, more intimate. Mia felt a firm hand touch her arm, guiding her through the office to the leather couch. She heard the sound of fabric moving, felt the weight of something warm and expensive, his jacket, being placed over her shoulders. "This isn't enough," Tommy murmured, more to himself than to her. "You need warmth." The darkness had transformed the office into a completely different world. Tommy sat down on the couch and, without asking permission, pulled Mia close to him, enveloping her in his arms. The corporate hierarchy disintegrated the moment her skin touched his through their clothes. The warmth of his body was real, solid, and the only thing that mattered at that moment. "Is this appropriate?" Mia whispered, although she made no move to pull away. Her body betrayed her words, molding itself naturally against his chest. "Nothing about this situation is appropriate," Tommy replied, his voice hoarse. "But you'll freeze to death if we don't." In the near-total darkness, illuminated sporadically by flashes of lightning that transformed the city into a landscape of ghosts, the professional masks began to fall. Mia could feel his heart beating against her back, a rapid and uneven rhythm that contrasted with the image of absolute control he always projected. "You're scared," she said, not as a question, but as a statement. Tommy tensed for a moment, then relaxed. "I am. For the first time in years, I don't know what's going to happen in the next few minutes. I can't control anything. And that don't terrify you, doesn't it?" "Yes." The admission came out as a sigh. "When I was 18, I lost control for just a second, 1 second, Mia, and it cost my brother his life." Mia turned slightly to look at him in the darkness, although she could barely make out the contours of his face. "What happened?" "We were coming back from a party. I was driving, Raphael was in the passenger seat, talking about the girl he'd been dancing with all night. He was so excited." Tommy stopped, swallowing hard. "My cell phone rang. For a second, just a second, I took my eyes off the road to see who it was. A semi-truck had run a red light. If I had seen it a second earlier..." "It wasn't your fault," Mia said softly, turning completely to face him. Their faces were inches apart. "It was. And since then, I've never allowed anything to get out of my control again. Every decision, every move, every second of my life is calculated so that it never happens again." "But you're not living," she whispered. "You're just surviving." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain beating against the windows. Mia felt his breath against her face, warm and uneven. There was something about the vulnerability of that moment that made her dizzy. Seeing Tommy Thorne, the man who dominated boardrooms and moved millions with a simple gesture, completely stripped of his armor of control. "What about you?" he asked, his voice low. "What's your secret, Mia Rossi?" She hesitated. "I grew up in the South Side. My mom cleaned offices at night to pay for my schooling. When I got the scholarship to college, I swore I'd never go back to that life, that I'd do anything to get where you are. Anything. Anything." She paused, then continued, "Including falling for my boss and pretending it doesn't matter every day." The confession hung between them like a bomb about to explode. Tommy was completely still, and Mia immediately regretted the words that had escaped her lips. "Mia," he began, but she interrupted him. "Forget what I said. The storm, the darkness, all of this is not real. Tomorrow everything goes back to normal, and what if I don't want it to go back to normal?" His question silenced her. A lightning flash illuminated the office for a split second, and she could see his eyes fixed on hers, an intensity she had never seen before. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered. "I know exactly what I'm saying. Do you think I haven't noticed? All the glances we exchange when we think no one's watching, the way you tense up when I walk past your desk, the way your face flushes when our fingers accidentally touch." Mia's heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. We're from different worlds, Tommy. You're Tommy Thorne and you're the only person who sees me. Not the CEO, not the money, not the power. You see the man I really am. Another lightning flash illuminated the office, and this time, she saw the truth in his eyes. It wasn't just desire. It was need, loneliness, the hunger of someone who had kept himself isolated for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to be touched by another person. This will change everything. She sighed, even as her hands found his chest. I know, he replied, before tilting his head and finally kissing her. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, as if they were both testing dangerous waters. But when she responded, twining her fingers in his hair, the restraint dissolved. Years of repressed tension exploded in that moment, and they kissed with the hunger of two people who had denied their feelings for too long. When they broke apart, breathless, reality began to creep back in. They were boss and employee. He was one of the most powerful men in the country. She was a girl from the South Side who had fought to get there. What had happened between them had the power to destroy everything she had worked for. No one can know, she said, her voice trembling. I know, he replied, pulling her closer. At least not yet. Outside, the storm continued its fury. But inside the office, in the warmth of each other's arms, they had found their own eye of the hurricane. They didn't know that downstairs, the security camera with independent battery power had captured their silhouette in the window during the lightning flash, and that this image would reach the right hands before dawn. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the storm, and the dynamic between Tommy and Mia had changed subtly but profoundly. To the outside world, they maintained the same impeccable, professional relationship, she anticipating his needs, he commanding meetings with his usual precision. But there were stolen moments, a prolonged touch when passing documents, glances that lingered a few seconds longer than necessary, the electric tension that filled the air when they were alone in the office. Mia discovered layers of Tommy that no one else knew. He arrived at the office an hour early just to have time to talk to her before the corporate day began. He told her about his secret passion for astronomy, about how he spent entire nights on the terrace of his apartment observing the stars when insomnia visited him. She in turn shared stories of her childhood, of the early mornings studying by candlelight when the power went out at home, of the fierce determination that had brought her this far. You've never told me about your father, Tommy said one morning, while they were reviewing contracts in an empty meeting room. Mia tensed. There's not much to tell. He abandoned us when I was 12 years old, said he couldn't live in that situation anymore. Situation? Poverty, responsibility, reality. She closed the folder more forcefully than necessary. My mom was devastated. I don't think she ever fully recovered. Tommy reached across the table, covering her hand with his. He was a coward. Any man who abandons his family doesn't deserve to be called a father. His touch sent waves of heat through her arm, but it also brought something else, a sense of security she had never experienced before. Sometimes I wonder if that's why I became so obsessed with control. If I control everything, no one can abandon me. We're both wounded, aren't we? He said, interlacing his fingers with hers. Two survivors trying to pretend we don't need anyone. But we do, she whispered, and he nodded. It was during a business trip to Washington, D.C., that the connection between them deepened irreversibly. Tommy had insisted she accompany him to a meeting with government investors, and they stayed at the same hotel. Officially, she had her own room. Unofficially, she spent the night in his arms, discovering that behind the facade of control was a caring, thoughtful man who touched her as if she were made of crystal. "So you have a birthmark here," he murmured, tracing a small star-shaped mark on her right shoulder. "It looks like a constellation." "My mom always said I had a star marked on my skin because I was destined to shine," she replied, shivering at his touch. She was right. But it was exactly this growing intimacy that made everything more dangerous. Mia began to notice suspicious glances from the other employees, whispers that ceased when she approached. The assistant to the head of HR, Carla, had become particularly hostile, making snide comments about people who use shortcuts to climb the ladder. "Do you think they know?" Mia asked one afternoon while organizing his schedule. We haven't been careful enough, Tommy admitted, glancing at the closed office door. But I also can't pretend this isn't happening. What are you saying? That maybe it's time to make this official. Mia felt her heart race. Official how? Like actually dating for real, no more hiding. Tommy, have you lost your mind? You're the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the country. I'm your secretary. The press would crucify us, your reputation. My reputation means nothing if I can't be with you. The intensity in his voice left her speechless. For weeks, she had dreamed of this moment. But now that it was happening, the weight of the consequences terrified her. I need to think, she said, and he nodded, although she could see the disappointment in his eyes. That night, Mia was in her small apartment in Wicker Park, trying to process everything that had happened, when her cell phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mia Rossi? The voice was male, deep, with an accent she couldn't identify. Who is this? Someone who has interesting information about you and your boss. Information that I'm sure you wouldn't want to become public. Mia's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? I have photos. You two in his office during the storm. Very intimate. I also have hotel check-in and check-out records from DC. Same night. Rooms next to each other but only one key being used. What do you want? $500,000. Wire transfer. You have 48 hours, or these photos are going to end up on the front page of every newspaper in the country. I imagine how that would affect the image of the esteemed clockmaker and his promising career. The call ended, and Mia stood in the middle of the room trembling. $500,000, an amount she would never have. But more than that, the exposure would destroy Tommy. His obsession with control and public image was known to everyone. If this leaked, she picked up her cell phone to call him but hesitated. How to explain that her recklessness had put everything at risk? How to confess that someone had managed to photograph them in the most vulnerable moment? The next morning, she arrived at the office earlier than usual, her eyes swollen from a sleepless night. Tommy found her arranging papers on his desk with mechanical robotic movements. Are you okay? He asked, closing the door behind him. I'm great, she lied, without looking up. Mia, look at me. When she finally did, he saw the terror in her eyes. What happened? Nothing, I think you were right yesterday. We need to stop this here and now. What are you talking about? It was a mistake. All of this was a mistake. I was confusing gratitude with other things. But now I see clearly. We're from different worlds and this could never work. Tommy was silent for a long moment, studying her face. You're lying. I'm not. Yes, you are. I know you, Mia. I know when you're scared. What happened? But she had already gotten up from the chair, walking towards the door. I need to get back to work. We have a meeting at 9. Mia, wait. Please, Mr. Thorne. Let's keep things professional from now on. The formal use of his name was like a slap in the face. Tommy stood in the middle of the office watching her leave, knowing that something was terribly wrong, but not knowing what to do to fix it. The next few days were a silent agony. Mia maintained a strictly professional distance, calling him only Mr. Thorne, avoiding any physical contact and leaving the room whenever they were alone. Tommy tried several times to strike up a conversation, but she responded with monosyllables and excuses to leave. The change did not go unnoticed by the other employees. Carla from HR made malicious comments about certain people who have finally learned their place. But Tommy didn't care about the gossip. He was consumed by the need to understand what had happened for Mia to change so drastically. During a particularly tense meeting with Japanese investors, Mia made a mistake that she would never make under normal circumstances. She forgot to print the translated contracts. Tommy saw the panic in her eyes when she realized the mistake, and for the first time in weeks she looked at him directly, vulnerable and scared. We'll figure it out, he said calmly, although inside he was seething with worry. Not about the mistake, that was easily correctable, but about the woman who had become a shadow of herself. That night, Tommy decided he needed answers. He followed her to the parking garage, catching up with her before she got into her car. Mia, stop, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, Mr. Thorne. Stop with this ridiculous formality. It's just us here. She turned to face him, and he saw tears in her eyes. That's exactly why we can't do this, because when we're alone, I forget everything. I forget that you're my boss, I forget that we're from different worlds, I forget that... Forget what? That this can only end badly for both of us. Tommy took a step forward. Or it could end well. Mia, I'm in love with you. I don't care what others think, I don't care about the consequences. You're the only real thing in my life. Don't say that, she whispered, shaking her head. Why not? It's the truth. Because it makes everything harder. Harder how? Mia closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. For a moment, Tommy thought she would finally tell him the truth. But when she opened them again, the wall was back up. Because I don't feel the same way, she lied. I apologize if I gave you the wrong impression. But what happened between us was a lapse in judgment on my part. It won't happen again. Her words were like knives. Tommy stood there, watching her get into her car and drive away, knowing she was lying, but unable to prove it. It was the next morning that everything fell apart. Tommy arrived at the office and found his temporary secretary, an older woman that Mia had requested to cover her absence, organizing papers on his desk. Where's Mia? He asked. She resigned last night, sir. Sent a letter by email. Said she got a better opportunity at another company. Tommy felt the world spin. What company? Didn't say, sir. Just asked me to give this to you. The woman handed him a sealed envelope. With trembling hands, Tommy opened it. Tommy, please don't try to find me. This is the best decision for both of us. You deserve someone who can be by your side without complications, without secrets, without fear. I'm not that person. Thank you for everything you've done for me. You'll always have a special place in my heart. Mia. Tommy crumpled the letter, fury and despair mixing in his chest. He called her cell phone, off. Called her apartment, number out of service. It was as if she had disappeared from the face of the earth. For 3 days, he used every resource at his disposal to find her. He hired private investigators, activated contacts in the police, even hacked security cameras. Nothing. Mia Rossi had vanished without a trace. It was then that he received a call that would change everything. Mr. Thorne, this is Diego Santos from Building Security. You asked to be notified if anyone inquired about Ms. Mia. Yes, what happened? A man was here last night, said he. Was a journalist, wanted information about her, seemed to know a lot about you two. Tommy's blood ran cold. What kind of information? About you two being alone in the office during the storm. About trips you took together. He showed some photos. What photos? Sir, I think it's better if we talk in person. An hour later, Tommy was in the security room, looking at grainy images from an external camera that had captured their silhouettes. In the office window on the night of the storm, the photos were blurry but unmistakable. This man who was here, can you identify him? He left a business card, said he wanted to give you the opportunity to comment before publishing the story. Tommy took the card. Ricardo Mendez, investigative journalist. But when he called the number, an automated voice said the number was not in service. He paid me $500 for the information, Diego continued, looking ashamed. Said it was routine journalism. $500. Tommy felt the pieces falling into place. It wasn't a journalist, it was a blackmailer. And somehow Mia had found out. That's why she had run away. That's why she had lied about her feelings. She was trying to protect him. Diego, I need you to tell me everything you remember about this man. Every detail. He was tall, dark-haired, had a scar on his chin, drove a silver Corolla. I wrote down the license plate because I thought it was strange for a journalist to drive such an old car. Tommy smiled for the first time in days. He finally had a lead. And when he found this man, he would find out where Mia was hiding. One last thing, sir, Diego said. He mentioned something about her having paid him well to keep quiet. Said it was a pity she didn't have the money to pay again. The implication of the words hit Tommy like a punch. Mia had paid the blackmailer, but if she didn't have the money to pay again, what had she done to get $500,000? The discovery that Mia had paid the blackmailer consumed Tommy for the next few days. He knew she didn't have that kind of money. He knew her salary, he knew her financial situation. The only way she could have gotten $500,000 would be through means he didn't even want to imagine. His private investigators finally found a lead. The silver Corolla was registered in the name of Ricardo Mendez Silva, a small-time criminal with a history of blackmail and extortion. Address: a rundown boarding house in the downtown area. Tommy arrived at the location accompanied by 2 security guards, fury boiling in his veins. The boarding house smelled of mold and cheap disinfectant. The manager, a skinny man with yellowed teeth, initially refused to give information, but changed his mind when Tommy placed $2,000 on the counter. Room 237, but he left yesterday morning with 2 suitcases, said he was going on a trip. Where to? Didn't say. But the woman who came looking for him the day before yesterday might know. Tommy's heart stopped. What woman? Pretty, dark-haired, well-dressed, seemed nervous. They were talking for over an hour. Did she say her name? Mia something. Tommy climbed the stairs 3 steps at a time, his heart pounding erratically. Room 237 was open, completely empty, except for a few sheets of paper on the floor. He quickly gathered them up, drafts of a letter with several versions of the same message. Tommy, when you read this, I'll already be gone. I can't live with the weight of what I've done anymore. He wanted more money and I didn't have it. So I did something I'll never forgive myself for. I sold the information about the Petromex acquisition to the competitors. I used privileged information I got working with you to betray you in the worst possible way. Tommy felt the world crumble. The Petromex acquisition, the deal he had planned for months, which represented the expansion of his empire into the oil sector. The week before, inexplicably, the rival company had made a better offer, knowing details that only he and Mia knew. He continued reading. I know you'll never forgive me, and you shouldn't. I betrayed your trust, I betrayed everything we built together. But you need to know that I did it to protect you. The photos he had would destroy us, destroy your reputation, everything you've worked for. I thought that if I gave him the information, he would leave me alone, and you would never need to know what happened between us. But now he wants more, and I have nothing left to give. Tommy's hands were shaking as he finished reading. I'm leaving the city. I'm going far away where I can't cause any more damage. Please don't look for me. You deserve someone who is worthy of your love. And after what I've done, I'm no longer that person. Forgive me if you can. I love you, and that's exactly why I need to disappear from your life. The letter was unsigned, but Tommy recognized her handwriting. He also recognized the despair, the self-deprecation that she always carried like a burden. Mia had sacrificed herself to protect him, and now she was running because she believed he would never forgive her. The boarding house manager appeared at the door. Did you find what you were looking for? The blackmailer, Ricardo. Did he say where he was going? He mentioned something about upstate, maybe Wisconsin. Said he had some more big fish to fry up there. Tommy took out his cell phone and called his head of security. Mark, I need you to find a man named Ricardo Mendez Silva. He's probably on his way to Wisconsin. I want him found and brought to me, alive. Understood, sir, and about the means? All necessary means, but I want him intact. I have questions to ask. While his men went hunting for the blackmailer, Tommy focused his efforts on finding Mia. She had withdrawn all her savings, about $15,000, 2 days earlier. It wasn't much, but enough for her to hide for a few weeks. He reviewed every detail he knew about her. The South Side, where she grew up. Her mother, who still lived there. Her studies, the scholarship. And then he remembered something she had mentioned weeks ago. An aunt who lived in a small town upstate, near Lake Geneva. Aparecida, he murmured, remembering the name. Aunt Aparecida, who owns a bed and breakfast. 2 hours later, Tommy was driving his BMW upstate, the GPS pointing towards Lake Geneva. He called all the contacts he had in the area, offering rewards for information about a young, dark-haired woman who had arrived recently. It was a taxi driver who gave him the decisive information. I took a girl with that description to a bed and breakfast in Antioch 3 days ago. She seemed very sad, cried during the entire trip. Antioch was a small town, nestled in the countryside. Tommy arrived there as the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. There were only 4 bed and breakfasts in the town, and at the third one he visited, the Mountain View Inn, he finally found her. She was in the back garden, sitting on a bench in front of a small pond, looking at the reflection of the hills in the water. She was wearing a simple sweater and jeans, her hair tied in a messy ponytail. When she heard his footsteps on the grass, she turned, and Tommy saw that she had lost weight, that there were dark circles under her eyes. "You shouldn't have come," she said calmly, as if she had been expecting him. "You shouldn't have run," he replied, stopping a few feet away. "Did you read the letter?" "I did." "Then you know why I'm here. You know why I can't go back." Tommy approached slowly, as if she were a wounded animal that might run away at any moment. "I know you betrayed me to protect both of us. I know you sacrificed yourself because you love me. And I know you're here punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault." "Wasn't my fault." She stood up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I sold confidential information. I betrayed your trust. I caused millions of dollars in damage to your company. You were blackmailed. You were coerced. I made a choice. The wrong choice. You made the only choice your heart allowed. You chose me over yourself." Mia shook her head, taking a step back. "It doesn't change what I did. It doesn't change the fact that I'm a traitor." "You're the woman I love," Tommy said, closing the distance between them. "And if you think I'm going to let a criminal destroy that, you don't know me." "Tommy, I found the blackmailer. My men are bringing him in now. He's going to return every cent he extorted from you, and he's going to pay for everything he's put us through." "That's not going to change what I did." "No, it won't. But it will give us the chance to start over together." She looked at him with a mixture of hope and despair. "How can you forgive me? How can you still want me after what I've done?" "Because I know your heart," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "Because I know you did it out of love, and because a life without you isn't worth living." The tears that Mia had held back for days finally came. She collapsed into Tommy's arms, sobbing against his chest as he held her tightly, whispering words of comfort. For long minutes they stood like that, in the quiet garden of the inn, as night fell over the hills. "I thought you would hate me," she murmured against his shirt. "I thought you didn't love me," he replied, kissing the top of her head. "When you said it had been a mistake, I was trying to protect you, protect both of us." "Never again," he said, pulling away enough to look into her eyes. "Never again do we face anything alone. We're a team now." Mia nodded, wiping away her tears. "But what about the blackmailer? What if he's already spread the photos?" "He hasn't spread them. Not yet. My men confirmed that he was waiting for more money before making anything public. Tommy, I need you to know I never wanted to betray you. When he showed me the photos, when he said he was going to ruin your reputation, I panicked. I couldn't think of another solution. You should have come to me. And say what? That we were photographed in an intimate moment, that our relationship would be exposed. You fought so hard to build your image, your company. I couldn't be the person who destroyed everything." Tommy took her hands in his. "Mia, listen carefully. You're not responsible for my image or for my company. You're responsible for your own happiness, and I'm responsible for protecting you. How? To start, we're going to deal with this blackmailer once and for all." Tommy's cell phone rang. It was Mark, his head of security. "Sir, we found the target. He's with us." "Where?" "At the company transport warehouse, as agreed. He's cooperative. I'm on my way. Keep him there." Tommy hung up and turned to Mia. "Come with me." "Tommy, I don't know if..." "Trust me. You need to see this. You need to see that he has no more power over us." The warehouse was an hour away on the outskirts of Kenosha. When they arrived, Mark met them at the entrance. He tried to run, but we managed to intercept him on the road. He's very nervous. "Did he bring the photos?" "Yes, sir. Everything's with him?" Tommy turned to Mia. "Stay here. I need to talk to him first." "No, I'm going with you. I need to face him." Ricardo Mendez Silva was smaller than Mia expected. He was sitting in a chair in the center of the warehouse, his hands tied, sweating profusely. When he saw Tommy enter, he tried to get up but was pushed back into the chair. "Mr. Thorne, I can explain." "Shut up," Tommy said coldly. "You're only going to speak when I allow it. I just wanted money. I wasn't really going to publish the photos." "Shut up," Tommy's voice echoed through the warehouse. "You blackmailed an innocent woman. You forced her to betray the trust of the man she loves. You destroyed lives for money." I need the money. I have debts." "Your debts are not my problem. Your choices are." Mia stepped forward. "He said he had more photos, that he was going to come back asking for more money." Ricardo looked at her and she saw the desperation in his eyes. I was bluffing. I only had those photos from the storm. Nothing else." "Liar," Tommy said. "You mentioned the hotel in DC." I only knew because you used the company credit card. I got the information from a contact at the hotel, but I didn't have any photos from there." The confirmation that it had all been a bluff infuriated Mia. "You made me believe you had compromising evidence. You made me betray the man I love for a lie." "I'm so sorry." "You're so sorry?" Mia approached him, the anger of years of submission and fear finally exploding. "You ruined my life. You made me believe I was a criminal." "Mia," Tommy said softly, placing his hand on her shoulder, "he's not worth your energy." She turned to him, her eyes shining with a determination he had never seen before. "You're right, he's not worth it." She turned back to Ricardo. "But you're going to pay for what you did." "What do you want?" Ricardo asked, his voice trembling. "First, you're going to return every cent you extorted from me. All die $500,000. I don't have that money anymore." "Then you're going to get it. You're going to sell everything you have. You're going to borrow. You're going to do whatever it takes. Second, you're going to sign a full confession admitting to the blackmail. Third, you're going to give me all the devices, cameras, equipment you used to spy on us. What if I don't do it?" It was Tommy who answered. "Then you're going to discover that I have a lot more resources to make your life a living hell than you ever had to make ours. You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you, I'm promising you. You can choose to cooperate and maybe be able to rebuild your life somewhere else, or you can choose to be difficult and find out how far my patience goes." Ricardo looked between the two, seeing the determination in Mia's eyes and the implacable coldness in Tommy's. I'll cooperate, but I need time to get the money." "You have 1 week," Mia said, "and during that week, you don't leave town. Our men will be watching you." "And the photos?" Mark approached, handing an envelope to Tommy. "All the photos, sir. We also confiscated his equipment." Tommy opened the envelope, examined the grainy and blurred photos, then tore them into small pieces. "It's over," he said, looking at Mia. "There's nothing else he can use against us." Can I leave now?" Ricardo asked. "After you sign." "The confession," Mia replied. "Mark, did you bring the papers?" "Yes, ma'am." While Ricardo signed the documents with trembling hands, Mia turned to Tommy. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For letting me face him. For letting me be strong." "You've always been strong, Mia. You were just scared. And now? Now we rebuild together." She smiled for the first time in weeks, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "Together," she repeated. When they left the warehouse, the storm that had started everything weeks ago seemed like a distant memory. But the lessons they had learned about trust, about love, about the courage to face their fears together, those would remain forever. A week after the confrontation with Ricardo, Mia returned to the Thorne Holdings office with a new perspective. She was no longer the submissive secretary who accepted everything in silence. She had discovered an inner strength that she didn't know she possessed. Tommy had insisted that she return to the company, but now as Chief Operating Officer, a position that reflected not only her skills, but also her personal importance in his life. "Are you ready for this?" Tommy asked as she entered the office on Monday morning. "More than ready," she replied, and he saw in her eyes a determination that made him smile. But not everything was resolved. The company had lost millions with the leak of information about Petromex, and the board of directors was questioning Tomi's leadership. Worse still, rumors about his relationship with Mia had begun to circulate among employees and investors. "Mr. Thorne," Carla appeared at the door, her face filled with barely disguised disapproval. "The board wants an urgent meeting. It seems there are issues to be discussed." Tomi and Mia exchanged glances. They both knew this was coming. "What kind of issues?" Mia asked, assuming her new role with ease. "Issues about professional conduct and conflicts of interest," Carla replied, clearly pleased to deliver the news. "It seems some people are concerned about the impartiality of executive decisions." "Let me guess," Mia said, getting up from her chair. "You were one of those people who expressed concerns." Carla blushed. You just what? Spread gossip, because you can't accept that someone you consider inferior has risen in the company." "Mia," Tomi began, but she gestured for him to stop. "No, Tomi, it's time for me to speak for myself." She turned to Carla. "My professional competence has nothing to do with my personal life. I worked hard to get where I am, and I won't allow anyone to question that." "People are talking about favoritism," Carla began. "What people? You? Because if anyone has a problem with my promotion, they can come talk to me directly." Carla left the room visibly intimidated, and Mia turned to Tomi. "I need to know, did you promote me because of merit or because of what's between us?" "Do? You really need to ask. I need to hear you say it. You were promoted because you're the most competent person I know. Because you know this company better than anyone on the board. Because you've saved me more times than I can count. And because you're the only person I trust completely. And the fact that we're together makes everything more complicated. But it doesn't change the fact that you deserve to be here." The board meeting was scheduled for the next day, but before it happened, Mia received a call that would change everything. "Ms. Rossi, this is Detective Oliveira from the police department. We need to talk to you about Ricardo Mendes Silva. What happened? He was found dead this morning, apparent suicide. He left a letter mentioning you and Mr. Thorne." Mia felt the world spin. "What letter?" "Better if we talk in person. Can you come down to the precinct?" 2 hours later, Mia and Tomi were sitting in the police precinct, reading the letter that Ricardo had left. In it, he confessed to blackmailing Mia, but also claimed that he had been threatened by powerful men who wanted to use the situation to harm Tomi. He mentions that he received a proposal from someone within the company itself, the detective explained, someone who wanted to use the scandal to force Mr. Thorne out of the presidency. "That's impossible," Tomi said. "Who in the company would have an interest in bringing me down?" "Someone who would benefit from your downfall," Mia replied, the pieces starting to fall into place. "Someone who has access to internal information. Someone who knew about our relationship even before we made it official." "Who are you thinking of?" Carla always knew everything that happened in the company. She had access to the systems, the schedules, everyone's movements, and she always showed hostility towards me. "But she wouldn't have the power to take over my position." "No, but she could be an informant for someone who does." Mia paused, thinking. "Tomi, who else would benefit from your departure?" "My cousin Edward. He's a minority shareholder, but he always thought he should have more power in the company, and he has connections with our competitors." The detective leaned forward. "Do you have proof of this?" "Not yet," Mia said, but her mind was already working. "But we will." "Mia, what are you planning?" "I'm going to do what I do best, find out the truth. If Edward is behind this, if he used Ricardo to blackmail us and then eliminated him to cover his tracks, we're going to expose it." "That's dangerous. If they killed Ricardo..." "They're not going to kill me, it would be too obvious. But they'll try to intimidate me, discredit me." She stood up, determination shining in her eyes. "It's time for me to use everything I've learned working with you. All the strategy, all the ability to anticipate movements. You're not going to do this alone." "No, but I need to lead. I need to be the one to confront them, because I'm the one they underestimate." That night, Mia worked late gathering evidence, tracking financial transactions, analyzing internal communications. She discovered that Carla had made several calls to Edward in recent months, always after important company events. She also found evidence that confidential information had been accessed from Carla's computer outside of business hours. "They thought I was just a secretary," she said to Tommy as she organized the documents. "That I wasn't paying attention, that I wouldn't understand the implications. But I saw everything. I recorded everything. I have evidence of 3 years of suspicious activity. Mia, you're brilliant. I'm determined, and now I'm furious." She turned to him. "They used my insecurity against me. They made me believe that I didn't deserve to be here, that I was an imposter. But I'm not. I belong here, and I'm going to prove it. What do you want to do? I want you to schedule an extraordinary board meeting. Say you have important revelations about the Petromex leak. Make sure Edward is there. And then I'm going to do what you taught me. Control the narrative. I'm going to expose everything. Their plan, the evidence, the truth about Ricardo. I'm going to show everyone that I'm not a victim." Tommy smiled, seeing the strong and determined woman she had become. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been so sure of anything in my life." Mia took his hand. "But I need you to promise me one thing. Anything. If something goes wrong, if they try to harm me, don't give up on us. Don't let them win." "Never," he said, kissing her hand. "We'll face this together." But they both knew that the real battle was just beginning. Edward had resources, connections, and now he also had blood on his hands. The board meeting would be a battlefield, and Mia was preparing for the fight of her life. The board meeting room was tense as Mia entered, carrying a folder of documents and a laptop. Edward Thorne was sitting at the head of the table opposite Tommy, a confident smile on his face. Carla was present as the meeting secretary, avoiding Mia's gaze. The other 5 members of the board seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "Gentlemen," Tommy began, "I called this meeting because we have crucial information about the leak that cost the company the Petromex deal. Mia Rossi, our new chief operating officer, will give the presentation." Edward laughed coldly. "The secretary who became COO? How convenient. I'm sure her findings will be impartial." "Impartial enough to expose the truth," Mia replied, connecting her laptop to the projector. "Gentlemen, for the past 3 years, this company has been systematically sabotaged by someone from within, someone who sold confidential information, manipulated negotiations, and recently orchestrated a blackmail scheme that resulted in death. These are very serious accusations," said one of the board members, "and I have proof for every one of them." Mia clicked on the first slide. "These are the calls made from Carla Mendez's corporate phone in the last 6 months. Note the numbers highlighted in red." All to Edward Thorne, always after confidential meetings. Edward maintained his composure, but Mia saw his hands clench. "I'm a shareholder in the company. It's natural for me to receive information. Information that reached you even before it was disclosed to the board," Mia continued. Second slide. Financial transactions. "Edward, you made investments based on inside information at least 12 times in the last year. You can't prove that." "I can and I will." Mia advanced to the next slide. "Here we have the recordings of the meetings where this information was discussed. And here we have the purchase and sale orders made by your shell companies, always 24 to 48 hours before the public announcements." The silence in the room was deafening. Carla was as pale as a sheet. "But that's not all," Mia continued, her voice gaining strength. "You weren't content with illegal profits. You wanted total control of the company. So you orchestrated a plan to blackmail Tommy and force me to leak information about Petromex." "This is ridiculous," Edward said, but the sweat on his forehead betrayed him. Ricardo Mendez Silva, the blackmailer, wasn't just a common criminal. He was an enforcer. "These are the wire transfers from one of your company's account to his account, Edward. $50,000 paid 3 days before the storm that left me alone with Tommy in the office. You can't prove that I can prove that you paid Ricardo to photograph us. I can prove that Carla provided information about our schedules and movements. And I can prove that when Ricardo started to become a problem, you eliminated him." "Mia, no," Carla finally spoke, her voice trembling. "It wasn't like that. I didn't know they were going to hurt him." "Shut up, Carla," Edward hissed. "No, I'm not going to shut up anymore," Carla exploded, tears running down her face. I thought it was just corporate espionage. Edward promised me that no one would get hurt. He said he just wanted information to protect his investments. What about the plan to blackmail Tommy? Mia pressed. Edward said it was for the good of the company, that Tommy was losing focus, that a relationship with the secretary would compromise his leadership. I thought I was helping. Helping who, him or the company? I don't know anymore, Carla sobbed. When I found out that Ricardo was dead, that he had killed himself because of what we did, I couldn't sleep anymore. Edward stood up abruptly. You can't prove anything. It's just speculation from a desperate woman trying to protect her love affair. Sit down, Mia said, her voice as sharp as a blade. I'm not finished yet. Edward hesitated, then sat down slowly. Ricardo left a letter confessing everything, but he also left this. Mia connected a flash drive to the laptop. Recordings. He was afraid of you, so he recorded all the conversations he had with Edward. Edward's voice filled the room, clear and incriminating. The job needs to be clean, nothing that can be traced back to us. And if he becomes a problem, you know what to do. That doesn't prove anything, Edward stammered. It proves conspiracy, blackmail, and at least complicity in homicide, Mia replied. Detective Oliveira, you can come in now? The door opened and the detective entered, accompanied by 2 police officers. Edward paled. Edward Thorne, the detective said, you're under arrest on suspicion of blackmail, racketeering, and homicide. Carla Mendez, you're also under arrest as an accomplice. As Edward was being handcuffed, he looked at Mia with pure hatred. You think you've won? You're just a girl from the South Side who seduced her way to power. You're wrong, Mia replied, calmly. I'm a woman who fought for everything she has, who overcame every obstacle you put in my way, who transformed pain into strength and fear into courage. And now? Edward asked as he was being led away. Now I'm going to run this company alongside the man I love. I'm going to build the future I deserve, and I'm going to make sure that no one else is blackmailed or manipulated here. After Edward and Carla were taken away, the room fell silent. The board members looked at Mia with a mixture of admiration and respect. Gentlemen, Tommy said, I believe there's no more doubt about Ms. Rossi's competence and integrity. No doubt, agreed the oldest board member. Ms. Rossi, on behalf of the board, I'd like to apologize for any questioning of your qualifications. Thank you, Mia replied, but I don't need apologies. I need opportunities to prove my worth every day. 6 months later, Mia was on the terrace of Tommy's apartment, watching the stars, through the telescope he had bought for her. The company was stronger than ever, and their relationship was no longer a secret. It was a partnership, respected both in the business world and in their personal lives. What are you thinking about? Tommy asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. About how we got here, about the storm that changed everything. Do you regret it? Never. That storm taught me that sometimes we need to lose control to find our true strength. And I learned that real control doesn't come from dominating everything around us, he said, kissing her neck. It comes from trusting the right person to share our life. Tommy. Yes. Next time there's a storm, let's not try to work through it. He laughed, pulling her closer. Promised. But if there is a next storm, at least now we know that we can face it together. Mia turned in his arms, looking at the man who had taught her to believe in herself, who had fought alongside her against every obstacle. Together, she repeated, sealing the promise with a kiss. Outside, a light breeze began to blow. But this time it didn't bring a storm. It brought the promise of clear days ahead. And as they kissed under the stars, Mia knew that she had finally found her place in the world, not as someone who hid in the shadows, but as a woman who had learned to shine with her own light.